For this video, you're going to be doing your value scale and charcoal pencil. So the first things that you're going to need, you're going to possibly need a pencil sharpener. I have these on my desk. You can come and borrow one. These work better for the charcoals than the one on the wall because they are really a lot sharper and you can get a better tip on your pencil there. You're going to be using a General's charcoal pencil. This one is a medium. You can also use the softer one. These are going to be a good medium weight to blend with, and they're going to create some nice dark values for you. This is a blending stump. This is a number 5, so it's a pretty large blending stump. You can see there's already some charcoal on there. If you ever get this and there's a ton of charcoal on the end of it, it doesn't matter a whole lot, but if you want it to go away, you can take an eraser and just kind of wipe it onto an eraser, pull towards you, and roll away from you. And that will sort of get off any of that extra charcoal that's on there so that it doesn't come off onto your paper very much. Okay, when we start on this last one, again, like we did before, we're going to start on the ends and work to the center. The cool thing about this, though, is that instead of using just the drawing tool to blend with, we're also going to be using this tool. This is a new tool. The blending stump is going to help you. We're going to start with the darkest, which is the number 10. And for this one, just like with the pencil, you want to make sure that you're holding it so that the side of the tip of this pencil, the side of it, is going to make a wider mark when you shade with it than if you hold it straight up and down. So if I hold it straight up and down, it's going to shade like this. If I hold it down closer so that the side of that black part is on the paper, you can see it makes a much wider, sort of more blended area. So I'm going to hold it that way. When you do this, you might need the tip of it to kind of get near the corners. You notice how I'm not pressing super hard. The key with charcoal, unlike colored pencil, you don't want to press hard with charcoal. All you want to do is give it about moderate pressure, so about the same amount of pressure you would have given number 6 on the graphite, or number 7, sort of a medium pressure. That's what you're going to use with the charcoal. When you try to go darker, you just want to go over it more. If you press really super hard, what happens is that you actually polish these tiny little particles into the paper, and it makes it shiny. So we don't want that, because if it's the tooth of the paper is shiny, then it won't hold on to the charcoal. So once we get number 10, you can still see that there's a few little flecks. I don't know if the camera is picking that up or not. There's still a few little flecks in there. So I'm going to go ahead and, with very light circular motion, with the tip of the blending tool, I'm just letting the weight of the blending tool do this. I'm going to blend in that little bit of white space that's showing up. What this does also is it puts the charcoal at the end of my blending stump. So actually, when you're in your drawing, this will pick up charcoal too, so that you can put it other places. So if I rub over a really super dark area and then somewhere else, you can see that it actually creates a lighter value. So I can use that to my advantage when I get to the drawing later. This will kind of show you how the blending tool works. It softens and distributes that pigment in a more general area, so it kind of goes in those little white spaces that the charcoal pencil skips. So we did number 10. I'm going to go all the way up to number 2, and I'm going to work on number 2 next. So again, as light as I can, just like I did with the graphite scale, I'm going to hold this way back here at the end of the pencil and just let the weight of the pencil on the paper make the marks. Try to use the side of the cone at the tip of the pencil so I get a broader mark. Once I think I have the majority of that filled in, then I'm going to go to my blending tool again, and I'm very lightly, again with the side, going to very lightly rub over the surface of that. I'm going to go in different directions. I feel like I have something on the table underneath that's making that mark. Okay, I'm not happy with how that looks. I think it's a little too dark. So I'm going to come in with my regular eraser and very lightly rub across the surface to lighten that up. Even if I rub kind of hard on this, you can see that not all the charcoal is going to go away. Some of it's going to stay there. So that's about the value I want. Now I've got some areas like right there and right there that are a little too dark. So I'm going to take my eraser and kind of rub over those areas to try and make it as smooth as possible. Now I'm going to work on the 6. Again, using the side of the pencil. Just about the same amount of pressure that you used for the graphite. But instead of going over it and over and over and over to cover up all the white space like I did for 10, this one I'm just going to give it one even coat. You can see that there's some little white specks in there. Hold that up so you can see it. There's some white specks. So I'm going to use the blending tool to blend those out. Again, very, very lightly. I am not pressing hard with this. I'm just barely rubbing over it in little circular motions. A couple of different directions to get sort of a mid-tone between the darkest black and the lightest light. That may or may not be too dark. I'm not sure yet, so I'm going to leave it for now. I'm going to then start on number 4, so halfway between the number 2 value and the number 6 value. I'm going to try to let up on my pressure just a little bit and use my blending tool, the side of the blending tool. So that's about halfway value in between those two. I'm going to work on number 3. So again, I'm trying to very lightly, as light as I can make a mark, and then use the blending tool over it to smooth it out. Now 3 and 4 are starting to look a little bit too similar, so I think I'm going to lighten up the 3 just a little bit. So I'm just very lightly rubbing over the 3 until I start to see a noticeable difference between 3 and 4. So now it looks to me like there's a step there. Okay, so now I'm going to do number 5, halfway between 4 and 6. Shade it in, use the blending tool, and then adjust. Notice how I'm using it in multiple directions to get that blending to go into different spots. So for right now, it looks like maybe somewhere through here. I still think this could be slightly lighter. So I'm going to lighten up 3 even more, just a tiny bit. And lighten up 4 just a tiny bit. And then lighten up. So trying to make that transition so that there's a definite change between each value. Okay. Now I'm going to move on to 7. Usually this part is harder than this part is because it just is. So you got to kind of keep in mind you might need to go back and add a little bit more charcoal on the 10, or you might need to lighten up the lighter scale so that it shows up in the darker end of it. But you're going to kind of approach this in a way that you shade it in. If you want it to get darker, just remember that you don't want to press harder. You just want to go over it more. So I'm not pressing any harder, but you can see the more I rub over it, the darker it's getting. So add your charcoal, blend. Sometimes, a little tip about charcoal pencils is that there's no binding agent. So when we were using the colored pencil, there's a wax that comes into the colored pencil, like I told you before, that you have to press hard with the colored pencil or it won't blend. With the charcoal pencil, there's no wax, there's no nothing. The only thing holding this charcoal together, those particles together in the core of this pencil, is pressure when they made it, and the pressure of the wood surrounding it. There's very little, if any, binding agent. So you need to make sure that when you're coloring, you don't press hard or it will just crumble. So the way to get darker values is, again, just go over the same area over and over again, and eventually it will start to turn darker. Don't press hard. I know it's hard to resist the urge to press hard, but you must do it. Okay, so there's the initial charcoaling. Now we're blending it.
Okay, so 6 and 7 are looking kind of similar there. So I'm going to lighten up 5 just a teeny bit, and 6 just a teeny bit. B5 a little more, so that there's a step there, okay, between 7 and 8. It's very subtle, but there is a step there. I don't know if you can see that on camera very well. So I'm going to darken 8 just a teensy bit. It's all about layering with the charcoal and blending it, but you never want to press hard. You want to let your charcoal develop. So you put layers of charcoal on without pressing hard, and if you want to fill in those white spaces, you need to use the blending tool. So eventually, as you work back and forth on this, you can sort of tweak it and adjust it to make it lighter or darker, to make sure that you have a definite step, a definite change in value from one to the next. Like I said, the 7, 8, 9 area is probably, or between 7 and 10 is probably the hardest part. Once you get finished with this, you're going to take a regular eraser and you're going to clean it up. So go back along the edges very carefully. If you got anything outside the edges, you can blow away the eraser combs. You don't want to smear it. If you run your hand across it, you're going to end up with charcoal on your hand. Erase away anything on the edges. Even if I scrub with this eraser on the charcoal, you can see that the charcoal is different from regular pencil in that it doesn't erase all the way. The paper that we're going to be using for our drawing is gray already, so you won't have to worry as much about the mid-tones. You'll be adding lighter and darker high key and low key values because the paper is already that color. So don't worry when you get to do your drawing. Most of the mid-tone values are done for you. You don't have to do much, which is the hard part. So you'll have to mostly on your actual drawing use the high key and low key values. Alright, so when you're finished with all of these, ta-da, and you've done the hatching and cross hatching on the other side, this one, you can go ahead and turn in your worksheet through our Schoology page by taking a photo of it and then sending it to me that way. So I will explain that in class if you want to know how to do that more. Good job, you guys. Thanks for watching.